that. Hi class, welcome to the week 11 lecture video. Today's video won't be as long as some of them we've previously had. I'm sure some of you are thinking, yes, right now. We have one chapter we're going to review. It involves introductions and conclusions. And when it comes to outlines, I'm basically just going to refer you to the previous week's lecture videos where we really went over outlining. And if you have any questions about outlining, I'm going to urge you to email me this week or make a note to bring it up during our one-on-one Zoom meeting. And if you've already watched our week 11 activities, announcements, and expectations video, you know what those are about. So if you haven't watched that video yet, pause this one, watch that one first, then come back to this one. And if you have any issues with outlining, be sure to make sure we talk about them during your one-on-one, or just go ahead and email me and we will work that out. But we've talked about outlining so much in previous weeks, and I'm not hearing people ask me questions about the outlining so much, so I'm assuming you're all good with it. I'm also assuming you all are keeping up with the videos and the readings, so I might be wrong about that. If I am, and you're just now getting to a point where you're like, oh goodness, I'm getting caught up right now, but I have questions, feel free, email me anytime, we'll get everything worked out. So for this video, we're going to talk about introductions and conclusions. Finally, we're going to get past the body and get to the beginning and the ending of your speech and what I expect when I hear your speech, your informative speech, which is coming due very soon, and then later your persuasive speech. And then I'm going to let you go and do all the other stuff that you need to be doing this week. So it shouldn't take too long for us to get done. Yay. All right, let's open up my share screen and jump right in, shall we? I think we shall. So I want you to read all the chapter because there's a lot more content than what we're going to talk about. But within this video, I want you to know the things I will be looking for specifically when it comes to your introductions and your conclusions. And these are in the textbook, but I really wanted to reiterate these because they are important. If I don't see one of these things happening, you're going to get marked down. So when it comes to your introduction, this is where you get everybody off to a good start with your speech. You want people to hear your introduction and think, wow, this sounds awesome. I want to keep listening to this speech. And so how are we going to do that? Well, your textbook says, you know, this is how you're going to structure your introduction. I think of them as these are goals you want to accomplish within your introduction so that by the time you get to the body, the meat of your speech, or if you're vegan or vegetarian, you know, the good stuff on your plate, you know, basically you're going to get to the hearty stuff. But you want people to be so invested in what you're talking about through your introduction, they just want to keep right on listening. So this is another fun thing. Your book tells you there are 5. When I took public speaking way back in caveman days, there were 4. And honestly, I think there still are 4. They've split one of them into 2 pieces. So I'm putting it back into one because I think they're kind of the same thing. So these are the 4 things I'm going to expect when I hear your introduction. And I already know some questions you're going to have or some arguments about them, but I'll try to elaborate on those as we go through. So the first thing, you're going to want to get your audience's attention. You want to start off with something that really gets people thinking about your topic. And there are a whole bunch of ways to do this presented in the textbook. You know, you can start with a personal story, you can start with a rhetorical question, you can start with a really compelling statistic. There's a lot of ways to do this. I think for most cases, if something is interesting to you, then do something like whatever you're thinking. You know, if you are doing your research and you find a statistic and you're like, wow, that's really interesting. That might be what you use to get people interested in your topic with your introduction. Or if you have a personal story that you're like, I feel such a connection to this topic because of what happened to me X years ago. And you're feeling open to sharing a little bit of that story. You don't have to share a long time because you don't have a long time in your speech, but you might feel willing to share a little summary and then how that connects to your topic. If it's interesting to you, then it's going to look interesting to you, and people are really gonna feel that. They really are. So find a way to get your audience's attention, and there are multiple ways to do this. Read the chapter. The second thing I'm going to expect you to do is establish or enhance your credibility. Why should we listen to what you're talking about? Why should we think that you know what you're talking about? Especially when it comes to an informative speech, and I gave you all countries that I know a lot of you are like, I don't know much about that country. So you're going to have to say something that lets us go, okay, I can trust what you're saying. You might have to give a sentence like, for this assignment, I needed to look up information about my small country. And in doing so, I found a lot of information about my country and X topic. And the more I read about it, the more interested I became in whatever. And that lets us know that you've done the research, you've done the work, and we should be able to trust what you're saying because you've done the background necessary to be able to present something like this. Whenever you're giving a speech in the future, and it's something you truly do know about, you'll want to present whatever that background is to people. For example, if you ever hear a doctor talk about medication that they like to use for a certain disease, they'll always say something, well, I'm Dr. Such and such. For the past 20 years, I've been particularly involved in studying this disease, and after such amount of time working with such and such pharmaceutical company, I feel assured in saying this. And that lets us know, okay, this guy's a doctor, they have studied this issue, I can believe them because of that background information. So you do actually verbally have to let us know why we should listen to you, right? If someone just stands up and, like, if it's me and I'm like, I'm going to give you the top 10 ways to break into the wrestling business and professional wrestling, let's say, you're like, really, how do you know anything about professional wrestling? And I just go into it without explaining, where I got the information or why I'm even interested in it. You're going to be skeptical, right? I mean, do I look like I've ever been involved in professional wrestling? The answer is I haven't. And if I did a lot of research, I probably could give a speech on it, but I need to let you know why you should listen to me. Even if it is just, I've been reading a lot about it, and this is what I've learned. Even if it's just something like that, we need to hear why we should listen to you. The third thing we need to do is establish rapport. Establishing rapport means developing a relationship, even a temporary one, with your audience. This involves having conversational and personable delivery. It also means writing your introduction and really the rest of your speech in a way that you're speaking to these people as if you really want to have a connection with them about what you're talking about. So if I'm doing an informative speech, how to organize a public speech, which none of you can do, as your topic, I'm just saying. I probably want to talk about my experiences, not only giving public speaking, but teaching public speaking. And that will get your attention. It'll enhance my credibility. But as I write it, I don't want to write so stilted and stuffy that I sound like an old fuddy-duddy, in public speaking. I want to use language and a style that is compelling to the audience who I'm going to be speaking to. So that is where the rapport comes in. You need to know who your audience is, what they're hoping to hear about, what they want to get out of listening to your speech, and then really communicating with them in a way that lets them go, okay, not only can I trust this person, but they're very engaging. They have a style that makes me go, you and I, we have things in common. And I'm going to keep listening because you're interesting. And I think, we have a connection, at least where this topic is concerned. And then the fourth thing, which if you read the book, is fourth and fifth thing, you want to preview your central idea. And they say a fifth thing is you want to preview your main points. Honestly, if you just preview your central idea, and this means literally stating what your central idea statement is, I'm good with that. Some speakers nowadays and some classes will say that includes sharing what your main points are. And honestly, your main points are probably a part of your central idea. So that's why I'm like, if they're the same thing, then it is the same thing. If they're not the same thing, I'm not going to get bent out of shape about it. So, for example, if I'm doing an informative speech and my specific purpose is to inform my audience of the steps that should be taken when organizing an informative speech. That's a long one. My central idea might be the steps one should take when organizing an informative speech include selecting the specific purpose and the central idea, doing research, organizing all of your information according to an outline, and then for writing the speech, 5, practicing the speech. And I think, yeah, that would involve outlining. That'd be the end sentence. And it does include my main points in there. And as such, I need to include that sentence in my introduction. Now, I know you're like, when people give speeches, they're not usually this straightforward. So if I actually come out and say, today, I'm happy to share with you the steps that you should take when you're organizing an informative speech, which include developing a specific purpose and central idea statement, doing research, organizing an outline, writing the speech, and then practicing the speech, period. You know, do you ever hear people give your central idea statement that boldly? The answer is not often, but we are learning how to do this. And as such, we are going to be bold and straightforward. And then later, as you get more used to developing speeches and as you watch more people give speeches, you will be able to hear when a central idea statement comes out that's not shaped like we're used to. It's not as elementary and basic, but you'll figure out, okay, I know that was a central idea statement. So right now, we're just going to be very straightforward. And when we say preview your central idea, it basically is you're going to put your central idea statement into your introduction. So you're going to do all 4 of those things. And if you do them in that order, I'm fine with that. Actually, you want to establish rapport throughout your introduction. And you want to enhance your credibility. You want to seem credible the whole time, but verbally, you do want to include sentences that say, here's my credibility with regard to this topic. Otherwise, we're always getting people's attention, and you really want to start off with a good sentence or 2 or whatever it takes to get people invested in your speech. So it can be a sentence, it can be a couple of sentences, it can be a question, it can be a small anecdote, you know, a personal story. Whatever it takes, you're going to start with that. Then you're going to say, you know, here's what I'm here to talk about. Here's why you should believe what I'm saying. That's the credibility part. Throughout, we're establishing rapport. And then you end your introduction by saying, well, today I'm here to tell you central idea. Okay? Thumbs up, thumbs up. Great. All right. When it comes to conclusions, there we go. You basically do the same thing again. For the most part, maybe not to the same extent, because you've just had all of your body of your speech, all of your main points, all of your subpoints. Basically, you've established your main points, and then you've explained them all. You've given good details. You've cited where you got your information. In the conclusion, I'm looking for 3 things that I want you to do to have a good, solid ending. The first thing is verbally signal that you're at the end. And this doesn't mean you actually baldly come up and say, I'm at the end now, although you kind of are. Verbally signaling means, well, after we've heard, and the second part is where this kind of, a lot of times people like to combine the 2, verbally signal that you're at the end and restate your main points. People tend to do those at the same time. So after all that, I'm sure you can go along with my assertion that if you're going to organize an informative speech, the important things to do are develop your specific purpose and your central idea statement, do the research, organize an outline, write the speech, and then practice the speech. So I've restated my main points, but I started by verbally saying, well, after all of that, I'm sure you realize, and that tells you, one, after all that leads people to go, oh, okay, after all that, we're heading towards the end. Or, there are many ways to word it. And if you keep reading in the book, you can find other things. But basically, by a switch of tone and how you get into the conclusion, the wording you use should signal to people, oh, we're at the end now. And the idea is not that you want people to think, oh, thank goodness, we're at the end. Oh my gosh. But you want people to go, okay, we're at the end. We've heard all the main points. And now this is the wrap up section, which is one of the reasons why we restate our main points. And I know what you're thinking. Okay, so wait. We said the main points at the beginning with our central idea statement. Then in the middle of the body, we said our main points because they were the main points. And now at the conclusion, we're going to state our main points again. It's just repeat, repeat, repeat. And the answer is, yes, it is. It absolutely is. Sometimes I say, when you give a speech, the first thing you tell people is, here's what I'm going to say. In the body, here's what I'm saying. In the conclusion, here's what I just said. We want people to be able to take away from our speech what your central idea and main points are, so that, like, let's say at the end of the speech, I gave everybody a test and said, okay, what was that speech about? Tell me what the central idea statement and all the main points were. You would remember it because you've heard them a few times. Once again, okay, in real life, people don't tend to do that? And the answer is no, this is foundational stuff. But if you can write a speech like this, anytime in the future, you can present a speech like this and nobody will think twice about it. They'll be like, okay, this person really seems to want us to understand these main points. And that's good stuff. If you work in a regular job and your boss says, I want you to give a speech to the staff on how to use the new telex system, whatever it is. And so you're like, oh my gosh, I have to give a speech. I haven't given a speech since that Communication 1100 class back at GSW. You could use the same system where in your introduction, okay, today we're here to learn more about the telex system. We're going to get everybody's attention so they're focused on you. You're going to build rapport with your audience, even though they're just your coworkers. You're going to state your credibility. I've been working with the telex system for a bit now. I've been working with the representatives who brought us the unit, and now I'm happy to explain to you. And when you're using the telex system, these are 4 things you need to be aware of. Then you're going to, in your body, go through part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. And in your conclusion, you're going to say, okay, so what I really want you to take away from this is the things to remember when you're working on the telex system are 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then do all the other steps you should with a conclusion, so that when your coworkers go back, what are they going to remember? Those 4 steps. Repetition will really help people come away from your speech knowing what they need to do next, or knowing the information that you have shared, right? Because you previewed it, you shared it, and then you reviewed it. So that's a real world experience where doing this sort of basic speech organization really works. All right, then the last thing you should do with a conclusion, when I took public speaking way back in the day, they called it, you want to send your audience away on a good final note. Basically, the last thing you want to say is something memorable, so that at the end, they're like, wow, I really heard a speech there. And in our textbook, they call it a clincher. Now, sometimes that can be, a final statistic on how important what you were talking about is, or maybe, if it's something you think people should look into further. You know, if you're interested in finding out more about informative public speeches, I suggest going to blah, 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 and you can share more information about that. And they go away going, wow, you know, I just had the best speech I ever heard about informative speeches, and now I really do want to learn more. So this final information gives me something to grow on, basically. Or if, you know, what somebody in your research, one of the people who was an author or sharer of information, they say something that's really profound, you can be like, ooh, I'll put that at the end to really kind of send people out on that final great thought. And you'll end by, and as one of the authors of the information I'm using for the speech said, Bob Smith, when talking about topic, said, profound thing. And everybody goes, ooh, that's good. You know, you just want to finish in a way that tells people this is final, but I'm going to remember this. All right, so in the introduction, we got 4 things. Conclusion, we have 3 things that I want you to do. And as I've said, basically, the beginning, here's what we're going to be hearing about during the body. Here's what we're thinking about. The conclusion, here's what we just heard about. And you're sending people away with an awesome ending somehow. All right, so I'm going to take this slide out. So that's pretty much the lecture for this week. If you look in the content, this isn't it though. I have 2 links to student presented speeches where I want you to watch those speeches, and you can watch them in full if you like, but I've also in the titles of those speeches put where the introduction starts and stops and where the conclusion starts and stops. And I want you to watch those speeches and see if you can identify those students and how they hit those 4 goals with the introduction and the 3 goals with the conclusion. And they all do so pretty well. So it shouldn't be a big mystery for you to watch and go, how did they establish their credibility? You know, how did they do that? Or did I hear their central idea? These should be really good examples so you can watch and see how actual students do this in real life. Okay? Awesome. So make sure you've watched our announcements, activities, and expectations video. And now go watch those 2 links to other student speeches. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to email me at any time. All right, let's go have a great week. All right. See you next time.